There we go. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 28 of the second season of the HoopTalk podcast. We are joined with our regular co-host, John D, and a special guest, well-renowned Knicks fan. So here on a bad day, but he still decided to show up for us. We appreciate it. Joel, welcome to the show. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys for having me on. This is the perfect time to talk about basketball. There's so many days in between the NBA Finals. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to talk about within the Knicks and the Timberwolves in their offseason. And yeah, the Pacers OKC Final. That's going to be fun to get into.
Obviously, if you don't know, Joel is a Knicks fan, very strong, passionate Knicks fan. I've seen him on the timeline celebrating some Knicks victories. Unfortunately, you guys did come short in the conference finals. I can't say that's not something me and John D didn't both predict. We both had the Pacers in 6 before the series. So, unfortunately, we were right. Unfortunately for you, anyway. Before we do talk about anything else, I just want to ask you, how do you feel about how that series went? And what's your thoughts on the Knicks' future?
I feel like we blew an opportunity. I think the Pacers were better than us, and that's why they're in the NBA Finals. But I look back to game one. I look back to being up 9 points with under a minute left and blowing that game. It definitely could have been 3-2. Game 6, they win. We are going back to the Garden for game 7. And then in game 6, I was very disappointed with how the Knicks played. The turnovers, bad transition defense. I mean, there was moments where Cat was on top of the key, and he was the first guy back in transition, and he had a head start and was still getting blown by, and players were getting into the basket. And we didn't shoot well from 3. And I thought this was one of Jalen Brunson's worst showing in the playoffs that I've seen since he's been on the Knicks. I think Tom Thibodeau, he has experimented with more rotations in the last couple of games, and I commend him for that. But Jalen Brunson being hounded constantly and there being no plan to kind of free him up to get him some easy looks going to the basket, I thought was a missed opportunity. And overall, I just think that the Knicks' weaknesses got exposed. Cat is not a good defensive player, and Tom Thibodeau refused to play lineups that can maximize him offensively at the 5. Whenever he's on the court, it's either with Mitchell Robinson, who can't space the floor, or it's with Josh Hart, who I thought was awful in this series. My goodness. He last year was one of my favorite Knicks players, and now this year, I don't even know what I feel about him. So I think overall it was just a missed opportunity. And I do think that the Pacers might have won anyway if we pressed all the right buttons and we had all the right calls in the right moments. But I just feel as if these two teams were equally matched. I think our starting lineup, we had an advantage in talent in that regard. And that was a lineup that was the worst for us. So I just think it's a missed opportunity. And I don't know where we go from here, because I think this roster is in a place where it's kind of stuck.
John D?
The New York Knicks are a very, very talented team, 100%. You have just some liabilities between your point guard and your center position, to where there were better lineups out there when it was Cat surrounded by a more defensive-oriented lineup. The same could be said about Jalen Brunson. And this, you hit it on the nail on the head. This is a very missed opportunity, because you beat Boston. You're in the conference finals, first time in, I believe, 25 years. But I don't necessarily think that the opportunity is 100% missed, because I think in the Eastern Conference, there's going to be a lot of teams really trying to go for it now that Boston is out. And it feels like it's a toss-up between Cleveland, the Pacers, the Knicks. I think if Orlando gets some shooting, they could be in that conversation as well with their defense and Paolo taking a jump. So I don't necessarily think that this is something that's just a 100% missed opportunity. You still have the talent. If you can bring in some more depth, I think that could help as well. But I do think that within your starting lineup, there are some defensive weak points that a lot of teams are going to be able to attack, which is why I picked the Pacers to win the series. But I don't necessarily think that the window is closed. I think next year there will be an opportunity if they just make a couple of tweaks, maybe bring in a more athletic big. I don't know who that would be, but somebody that can be a little bit more athletic and play next to Towns, that can have the speed to protect the rim and play in transition. Because as you could tell in that Pacers series, there was just moments where the Pacers were just getting up and down the floor with ease, and Mitchell Robinson was gassed, and Karl Anthony Towns is gassed, and there's just moments where the Pacers are going to be able to take advantage of every advantage you give them. They're not going to leave food on the bone anytime they have a chance offensively. So that's the only thing I would say with the Knicks. I wouldn't say this is like over. Like I wouldn't fire Tibbs yet. I would just probably get a deeper roster around your superstars, and then run it back one more year to see what happens. Because you have OG. OG is fantastic. Brunson's fantastic offensively. I don't think anybody questions how good he can be on the offensive end. I think it's just the defense and the depth.
John D, do you remember? It was a few months ago now, when I asked, because of Cat's defense, would I rather have Hartenstein instead of Cat? Not because Hartenstein's a better player, but because Cat's defense, I think, is so detrimental that you probably can't win with him, especially with the money he's making. And then I said I was on the fence on that because I didn't know how I felt, because Cat is obviously the far more talented player. Not even close. He's one of the most offensively gifted centers we've probably ever seen. And I want to ask Joel this. Is Cat so bad defensively that you would think about moving him? Like, do you genuinely think, especially assuming Brunson is untouchable or close to it, because he is elite, I think we can call a spade, would you, A, do you view Cat as untouchable? B, do you think you can win with him? And C, do you explore trades? So three questions in one there.
I don't view him as untouchable. I think you can't win a championship with him unless we have an overwhelming amount of depth that is unrealistic, similar to OKC, where they're able to do that because they have 2 stars on rookie deals and then Shea on a team-friendly deal. Brunson's on the team-friendly. We just don't have those 2 other stars on rookie contracts. And I've already started exploring trade options for Cat. I whipped up 2. I was on 2K last night, and I was just like, okay, how can I make contracts work and what makes sense? Because I just didn't want to make some unrealistic trades on 2K. So these were the two trades that I came up with. Number 1 is just a simple 1-for-1 swap. Cat for KD. The Suns get Cat. The Knicks get KD. And maybe if they want us to throw a pick or 2 in there, I would do it. But I think that even though a lot of people are on the fence about getting KD, I think KD not only is a better player than Cat right now, but he's way better defensively. So that's the first one that I cooked up. What do you guys think about that?
That's a come up if I'm New York. Like, you go get Kevin Durant for Cat straight up. You do that 10 times out of 10. And Phoenix actually gets a center to where they can be competitive too, because if they're not going to get their picks back, then you might as well try and be competitive, make a plan.
Booker, Beal, and Cat competitive?
You never know. What would have happened? Would have you get Cat, D Book, Bradley, Beal, be a decent enough offense, be an 8th, 9th seed. Who knows?
That defense is even worse than the defense they had this year.
100%.
And where did they rank the defense this year? Phoenix this year ranked,
like bottom 10.
They were 28th.
Dang.
Yeah, I didn't know they were 28th. So the 28th ranked defense loses what was, in my opinion, their best defender, like high minute defender. Respect to Ryan Dunn, but he was playing less than 20 minutes a game. So their best high minute defender replaces him with, in my opinion, maybe the worst defensive center in the sport. I don't know if that's a hot take, but maybe the worst defensive center in the sport.
Yeah, one of them.
Can they rank 32nd in defense of 30 teams? Is that possible? I don't know. And Cat's making how much money?
53 million.
Yeah, 50 plus million.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
That's a tough trade for the Suns. I think the thing that maybe pushes the Suns to do that is, A, if KD says he wants to go to the Knicks, which I'm not sure he would, but that, and B, the fact that KD is an expiring contract. So if you are able to get a guy of Cat's caliber back for someone who's expiring next year, that might be a saving grace. But in terms of logistical basketball sense, I have a hard time seeing why the 28th ranked defense would want to add Cat to it for their best defender. Feels like a bit of a reach. But if I'm the Knicks, absolutely, I want to go. Absolutely. That's a better offensive and defensive player, in my opinion, anyway.
And if you're going to go all in, the East is open next year. You might as well just go all in for KD. I'd even throw them picks. I think the Knicks have like 2 tradable first-round picks. They don't have that many after trading for Mikal Bridges, but I would do that. I would send them the 2 firsts, and I would send them Cat, maybe even 1 first. And then the other trade I had, which this is a foundation for it. There would have to be a third team involved, but I didn't really have the mental fortitude to try to come up with that third team in the moment. But the foundation of the deal would be Cat goes to Utah. Utah would then be the middleman and sending Cat somewhere else, and they would get a ton of picks back. and Utah sends Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton to the Knicks, and the Knicks would send picks back to them with maybe like a young player. And this deal is just Utah getting off of Lauri's contract, creating more of an opening for the younger players to play and getting picks back in return. And the Knicks would get Lauri, who I think he's a good defender and can space the floor, and Colin Sexton, who can off the bench dribble the basketball and do things with it.
Yeah, I think depth is a major thing to consider. You're a bit higher on Lauri Markkanen's defense than I am. But I'm still of the belief that Lauri Markkanen could be great for a contender. Now, is that contender the Knicks? I don't know. But I would like to see Lauri Markkanen moved. Colin Sexton is not someone I'm as high on, but I do understand when your backup guard depth is DeLon Wright, Campaign, and Landry Shamet. Maybe you do want to explore, or Deuce McBride, but maybe you do want to explore a Colin Sexton who can create off the bounce. Isn't the greatest playmaker, but can at least create for himself, and puts forth effort on defense, albeit he's not the greatest defender. I would prefer the KD avenue personally. I feel it's also just a simpler deal to get done in theory. But for me personally, I'm also of the belief that you can't win with Cat as your five. I just don't think that's tenable with how bad he is defensively. I also think he's probably making way too much money to where building a roster that hides his defensive flaws becomes practically impossible when you factor in the fact that he's making 50 plus million. So I would explore trades. Now, I haven't done as much due diligence as you, so I couldn't tell you who. But me personally, the person I'm trying to get off of is Josh Hart. I'm sorry. I think we're past the days where someone can be a bad defensive player and somehow doesn't get that label because he puts forth effort. Is a bad offensive player, but once again, doesn't get that label because he puts forth effort and then gets ignored on offense and gets guarded by other team centers. So you're not even maximizing, well, in this series, Miles Turner guarded Cat, but like for the most part, you're not even maximizing Cat's biggest strength, which is the fact that he takes bigs away from the rim because they just put the big on Josh Hart. So Cat ends up getting guarded by wings. The big is still roaming the paint. It just ruins everything. So I don't understand the Josh Hart infatuation. I saw what he did against the Sixers last year. He deployed devil magic and did something he's never done before in his life. But Josh Hart to me has to be moved. I don't understand the infatuation with a 6'4" rebounder. It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe you Knicks fans can explain to me what Josh Hart brings to the table. Because I'll admit, I didn't watch all 82 games of the Knicks, and I didn't watch how many playoff games did you guys play? 6, and then you beat
like 15, 16,
18 games, right?
18. Well, first one was 6, 12.
It was 6 in every series, right?
Yep.
Okay.
18.
I did watch all of your playoff games, but I didn't like some games were blowouts. I didn't watch every second of every game. So what's that? 98 games, 100 games, 82 plus 18, 100 games. I didn't watch all of them, but I don't know what Josh Hart brings to the table to where Tibbs is infatuated with him the way he is. He plays like 38 minutes a game. The minutes don't seem to go down in the playoffs. For me, it feels like you guys play 4 and 5 when he's out there. So can you explain the thought process behind Josh Hart?
It's a Tibbs thing. That's the explanation. And I don't know why Tibbs is so infatuated with him. Knicks Twitter all year long, they've been very low on Tibbs because we haven't maximized Cat at the 5. And I think the most realistic avenue for this team is that they're probably going to run it back. Like, that's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting that Tibbs will be back. If a move happens, it's going to be a very minimal one, like signing a veteran free agent on the mid-level exception and maybe exploring a Josh Hart trade. The toughest place that is where the Knicks are right now is the fact that their best players you can't trade because you might not get equal return back for them. You're not trading Brunson. You're not trading OG. You're not trading Mikal Bridges. Mikal's on an expiring, so you're not even going to get return on that value.
Yeah.
And then with Cat, he's making so much money that realistically there might be only like 2 to 3 teams in the NBA that are even interested in exploring a Cat deal. And that's why that when the Cat trade was made, I didn't like it. I hated it. I was watching TV. It happened, and I said, why did we do this? I didn't like it because I thought we lost Randall. We lost Dante. So we lost depth, and we traded a first-round pick that is going to be the 17th pick in the draft. Nobody expected Detroit to be good this year, so people thought that pick wasn't going to convert because I think it was 1 to 12 protected, and you thought the Pistons were going to be bad, and they weren't bad, and the Timberwolves just lucked out in that way. But I would have rather not traded for Cat because the limitations that he brings are clear. And Minnesota, they traded him to have financial flexibility. Now the Knicks are in a position where they're under the second apron, but they still don't have that flexibility financially. And once they extend Mikal Bridges, they will be over the second apron. The only trade avenue they can explore right now is Josh Hart, who's making between 14 to 16 million per year. And with the way he's played in the playoffs, how you just described him, a 6'4" rebounder, what is the value for him? Like I don't know if there's any realistic value out there that if the Knicks trade Josh Hart, they feel like, okay, this is a good deal for us and whoever we get back. So that's why I think this roster is kind of stuck. Like this is kind of what we see it's going to be. And any improvement is going to come internally from players that we draft and that's in the development system currently.
Josh Hart is making 19 million next year.
Oh my God.
With 20 million, well, 21 practically the year after, and then a team option for 22, which I would hope a team doesn't accept, but we'll see. Mikal, like you said, is due for an extension. Jalen Brunson will be your third highest paid player next year. Cat will be making 53 million. OG will be making 39.5 million, and Jalen Brunson will be making just shy of 35 million. Jalen Brunson is on a great contract. I think we can all agree. For the Knicks, not obviously for him, he could be making way more, but he did what he did, hoping that he could build a championship unit, and they've done this. I think personally, Josh Hart would be the first name I'm trying to get off of. Cat would be another one I'd explore. I really like Mitchell Robinson. I wasn't as high on his defense prior to these playoffs, but ever since he's been back, he's been elite on defense.
Yeah, he's been fantastic.
So I'm giving Mitchell Robinson all the credit in the world. The offensive rebounding stuff is amazing. Now, please get in the gym and work on some free throws because, goddamn, them free throws are shocking. I like Deuce McBride. I'm not sure how you guys.
I like him.
I like Deuce McBride. I think Landry Shamet was actually good in the series for you guys. But outside of OG, Brunson, Mitchell Robinson, and Deuce McBride, everyone else isn't someone I'm really tied to. If I'm the Knicks, I understand Mikal's going to stay, but I would be perfectly fine with Mikal going. I'm definitely trying to get off Josh Hart and Cat, but what? Because I think it's like you said. I think it's likely they stay with the same team. Do you think the conference finals is your ceiling? Like, do you think this is the best this team can ever do, or do you think like there is another step with the current roster that could maybe push them a bit further? Finals, maybe a championship.
I don't think a championship is realistic. I don't think it is. With this current roster, I don't think it is. I think with Tibbs as a coach, I don't think it is. And Tibbs is catching a lot of backlash. Everybody in Knicks Nation wants him fired. And I understand. I've disagreed with a lot of what he's done in this playoffs, but I also have a hard time envisioning any coach winning a championship with this roster. I don't think it's possible. I think there's too many liabilities. And if I was the Knicks, I would explore the Cat trade option, and I would just try to do my best to go get Kevin Durant. That's probably what I would do. I know that his age and the concern with him being like a team hopper and not like the best leader. I know that there's all these like different things around him, but he's just a better player, and he gives us a chance to win right now. And I think the Knicks window should be the next 2 years. You're looking at the next 2 years and saying this is where we can win, and Katie gives us the best chance to do that.
John D.
I get where you're coming from, and especially with like Mikal Bridges, because you gave up 5 first-round picks to go get Mikal Bridges, and with him about to be on an expiring, I don't think there's a way that you're going to get anything that is close to 5 first-round picks to where you could be like, okay, we got something back that kind of negates the fact that we gave up 5 first-round picks. The same could be said with Karl Anthony Towns. You're paying him $50 million. I don't know if you're going to get anything that necessarily kind of replaces that. And then you have, even if you were to get off of Karl Anthony Towns, you don't get something as good, but you still have something that's solid, maybe like a better rim protecting big. Jalen Brunson does become like it becomes like a Jalen Brunson show, the entire thing, because even though the Knicks have talented players that can provide offense, it still feels like sometimes the offense gets stagnant. It just feels like Jalen Brunson is the only one necessarily running the offense or contributing to the offense in a half court possession by possession. So you want that offense, but then again, you have so much struggles defensively to where it's pretty tough to try and move on and build a different team.
It sounds like we're all saying the Knicks are cooked, which is interesting because they just made the conference finals.
That's
Before, before we move out over to the West, no longer Gape, interesting name, said iHeart will feast on the Pacers. So before we do talk about the finals, I do want to just talk about the Indiana Pacers a little bit. I'm gonna start with you, John D. What are your thoughts on what the Pacers have done throughout the postseason, and without giving your prediction for the finals, what do you think they can do? Is, I guess, how I'll frame the question.
What I think they can do against OKC. A lot of people are kind of just writing this series off as like just saying the Thunder are going to win this series. I think there's a lot the Pacers can do to make the Thunder uncomfortable. One, the Oklahoma City Thunder have been giving up the most corner threes all postseason at 12.5 a game. The Pacers are shooting 47% from the corner all playoffs. Like, you're going to leave Aaron Nesmith in the corner, and you have a bunch of players on the Pacers that can dribble, drive, kick. You have the best decision maker in the league in Tyrese Halliburton. They're going to make the Thunder like, hey, you guys have the personnel to play one-on-one, but it's like you guys play really aggressive because you know you have the speed to rotate. But if you have guys that can dribble, drive, can shoot, can pass, it's going to be a lot different if you're going to want to attack that advantage late, because you have a guy like Tyrese Halliburton that can always make the right read, whether it's in pick and roll, and he can attack drop, he can attack blitz, he can attack hedges. He played a lot better against ball pressure over the course of the postseason as well. So I think they're going to get some really good shots. And this is another team in OKC that can probably match their transition style of offense. You have one of the best transition offenses in the league versus the best transition defense in the NBA. So I don't necessarily think this is going to be a wash. I think OKC is going to try to necessarily like give them the corner three. And it's like, even if they do try to run them off the 3-point line, I'm comfortable with Aaron Nesmith dribble driving and then kicking it to a Siakam, him dribble driving and then kicking out to a Halliburton. And then Miles Turner is wide open in the corner. This is a team that shoots 47% from the corners. They're going to be extremely efficient. They've been the most efficient offense in the postseason, and over like the last month and a half in a regular season, they've been one of the best teams in the league. So this is going to be a really good finals. Like, I don't think this is just like a wash.
I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk either. And the corner three stats that you mentioned, I think is interesting because now, I mean, that corner 3-point shooter is being replaced by Aaron Nesmith, but before they were comfortable giving up those threes to McDaniels, to Aaron Gordon, to Payne Watson, to just non-shooters. And now they're going to face a team that has shooting all over. So we'll see how they adjust to that. I think this is going to be a big test for Tyrese Halliburton and how well he can handle OKC's defense. I think that's number one. And Rick Carlisle, he adjusted brilliantly from game 5 to game 6 and the ball pressure that the Knicks were sending at Tyrese, and just trying to navigate different ways and creative ways to just get Halliburton freed off the ball. And I think with a coach as good as him that can scheme up so many different plays on offense, they could take advantage of OKC defensively. But OKC is an all-time team. And what I love about Indiana is that since January 1st, I think they were 8th in defensive rating. OKC has shown times, specifically in that Denver series, to be a little bit vulnerable in a half-court offensive setting. Indiana has been terrible against the top-end stars whenever they play them, whether it's been Giannis, Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, outside of game 6. And Brunson was kind of more up and down in this series. But Shea's just a different guard entirely. And I think this series really depends on how well Indiana can guard J-Dub and Chet. That's what I think it's going to be. It's going to come down to. But I've been very impressed with Indiana all season long. And even before the season, I was looking down the roster and I was just telling myself, how are they going to make room for some of these players to play? They're so good. Jarris Walker didn't get minutes all year long. He was barely in the rotation, and I thought he could contribute. And when he did play, he was really good. I think Indiana has just built a team that not only are they led by 2 stars, but they have so much depth around them that they're able to, for 48 minutes, have consistently good units out there on the floor. And if OKC is the team that has the best depth in the NBA, I think Indiana would be number 2. I think they're that good. And I think the 2 best teams are meeting the NBA Finals. And I'm looking forward to what Indiana does have to offer, because I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk But then again, we could just be underestimating OKC and they could just dominate this entire thing.
I think the Pacers, to John D's point, I do think the Pacers do things that can cause OKC some problems. I was doing some research before the show because I do my job a little bit sometimes. The Pacers had there's only 2 games sample. They only played each other twice, obviously, different conferences. The Pacers did have the second best half-court offense against this OKC team on the season. The only team above them was the Lakers. But they did lose both games, just point out that. But they did have the second best half-court offense at 104.6 offensive rating in the half-court, which is actually just really good, especially when you factor in the fact that the average against Oklahoma City was 90. So in the half-court, Indiana did really well. However, surprisingly, in transition, they were quite bad. They were 19th in points per possession, and their transition frequency was below average. So they weren't playing as fast against OKC as they are accustomed to, especially in the playoffs. And that's really their calling cards. And then defensively against OKC, it's even worse. They just couldn't guard them. And that's the bigger concern here. Their offensive rate, OKC's offensive rating in the half court was 113. So although Indiana had a 104, which is still really good, giving up a 113 in the half court is really bad. So that's where you get into the area of can Indiana keep up with them defensively? Because in transition, not only were OKC number 2 in they kept them out of transition a lot, Indiana. But when they were in transition, they blitzed them. A 143 offensive rating in transition. So if you're OKC, we know what they're going to do. Try and force turnovers, get out and run. Luckily for Indiana, Tyrese Halliburton doesn't turn the ball over that much. That's, to me, the key in the series. Borakua 9071 said something similar. He said if Halliburton can average less than 3.5 turnovers a game, I think OKC will have problems. Game 1 will be very telling. 3.5 turnovers is quite a lot of turnovers. But for OKC, I guess that's okay. But if Indiana cannot turn the ball over, which means I'm looking at Tyrese Halliburton mainly, and keep them out of transition, I do like their chances executing against OKC's defense. I'm of the belief this is not a Hartenstein series, personally, with all the movement. This is Chet at the 5, get Caruso in that starting lineup. We're running Shea, Jada, Blue Dort, Caruso, and Chet. That's my go-to 5. Hartenstein can come in, obviously with the offensive rebounding stuff, the stuff with the floaters and all those things are valuable. But heavy minutes, I'm going with that 5. So we have the maximum mobility. We have Caruso who can knock down the 3. We can go theoretical 5-out spacing. I think that's the go-to when you go against this Indiana team. Now, I do think some of us are this is wishful thinking, hoping for a good series, because we don't want to go, and this is a 2018 finals where it's a 4-0 sweep and one team is clearly better than the other. I think OKC are just clearly the better team. I don't even think it's close. But I do think there are ways for Indiana to make these games competitive. And I think in order for it to be anything of a series, Indiana have to get one of the first 2. They have to. They have to go to Indiana 1-1, and then we'll see what happens from there. If they go down 2-0, I refuse to believe this OKC team can lose 4 in 5 games. I refuse to believe it. I just don't think that's possible. So Indiana has to be 1-1 going back. And I highly doubt they will do that. But enough about why Indiana will lose to OKC, which is my opinion. What have you thought about Indiana thus far against Milwaukee, Cleveland, and then the Knicks? I'm going to go with you, Joel. What have you thought of the Pacers thus far?
They do a lot of brilliant things offensively, but I don't think they faced a challenge as big of a challenge as they're going to face against OKC. And that's why I worry about them in this series. Milwaukee was a bad defense. Cleveland has no point of attack defenders, and Evan Mobley can't save them all the time. So it wasn't a good defense they played against Cleveland. And then the Knicks have the personnel, but they also have 2 defensive liabilities that you can hunt every possession down. And OKC is just a different ball game. It's just a defense that has no mismatches you can hunt. You are always going to be hounded. They're going to play physical. They're going to pick you up 94 feet. And I think that's the biggest challenge. I think the biggest beneficiary of the Pacers playoff run has to be Tyrese Halliburton. I think the opinion on him coming into the season after the first couple of weeks and how he played was very down when I thought he was clearly injured. And he has since then, after the first 15 games, been one of the very best point guards in the game. And I think this playoff run has put him over a lot of top point guards. And now the Halliburton versus Brunson conversation has started. And I'm under the belief that it just depends on what you value in play style. If you want a scorer who can take over games, it is Brunson. But Hallie is more of a connector. He's not a liability on defense. And if you don't want to have the headache of having to cover for somebody that is very bad defensively, then Halliburton probably is the choice you make, and just having more of a connective, free flowing offense. So I think Halliburton has put himself into conversations. And after being labeled as the most overrated player in the league, who only 9 players really voted on that. So it wasn't even that much. It was just 9 players. I mean, he has proven himself, and I think he's just cementing himself. And it's been a great season for Indiana.
Who do you prefer, Brunson or Halliburton?
You're pulling out heartstrings right here, man.
It's my job. It's my job.
The Knicks fan answer in me is Brunson. That's my guy. That's who has led us to the first ECF that we've had in 25 years. And honestly, he's been the best player that I've seen since I've watched the Knicks. I think Carmelo is a probably better individual talent, but we just never had success with him because Phil Jackson just came in and ruined the team. But if I'm a neutral observer and I'm saying, okay, I have to start one to build my franchise around, and this is the engine that goes, it probably is Halliburton. I value what he does so much. And for the last 2-3 years, I've been very high on him. Last year I had him over John Morant. The year before I had him over Trae Young. Both times I got a lot of pushback from my co-hosts when I made those opinions, because I just think that we're in an era where we kind of undervalue players that don't score 25 a night, and Hallie's hovering around 19 a game. And the fact that he averages double-double and doesn't turn the ball over and is uber efficient kind of just gets swept under the rug. So I value what he does a lot, and I think he's one of the elite players in the league.
John D?
I think with this Pacers team, you get a really high floor. Like, you get a really high floor. You get an offense that's going to execute. Even like with Tyrese Halliburton, like, I think you saw Hallie's ceiling. If he's knocking down shots, he's fully engaged, he's making the right read constantly. You saw the absolute ceiling in game 4. And then like you see the floor is that you still get a guard who may not want to attack as much, but can still make the right read consistently, can still put Cat, Brunson, whether it's Jared Allen or whoever they want into a Brook Lopez, he can still put all those guys in the action at will. And when you have somebody that can constantly create the right advantage for a team and win the possession battle and always get better looks than the opposing team consistently, you're going to have a really good team, especially when you have 9-10 players deep that can play really good minutes. Jarace Walker, like you said, Joel, he's a really good player that doesn't get a lot of minutes. He's strong, he's athletic, he can defend, he can knock down some open shots. This Pacers team is really good, and they're always going to get the most they can out of every situation offensively. And I think Tyrese Halliburton is the ringleader of that. I also think Pascal Siakam's really good. He's one of the best mismatch attacking bigs in the league, whether it's in the post spin moves, being a dribble penetrator and finishing around the rim and being a shot maker as well. Miles Turner is good. I don't think he's like setting the world on fire, but being a stretch big that can run up and down the floor as well helps them as well, whether it's like leaking in transition or following in transition and getting open threes, whether it's catching lobs, finishing around the rim, being a pick and roll candidate with Tyrese Halliburton. Then you have TJ McConnell, who can come in and be amazing. Andrew Nembhard is one of my favorite players on the team. He's probably my favorite player on the team, just being a fantastic point of attack defender, being able to have the ball handle to get wherever you want on the floor. He shot 49% from mid-range over the course of the regular season, and he always rises in the playoffs. He had a pretty up and down series against New York, but I still think he's a fantastic player. So when you have multiple guys who can dribble, drive, kick, shoot, run up and down the floor, and you have a leader with such a high floor, it's going to be really hard to beat that team consistently.
You're muted.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah. I thought I was tripping.
Yeah, and who do you have, Brunson or Halliburton?
Who do I have?
Yeah.
I don't want this to sound like I'm gonna go Hallie.
Okay.
Things
I'm
change.
the lone Brunson guy, I guess. I do think they're both top 5 point guards.
Yeah, 100%.
I've had that opinion for a few months now. I know before the
Is
season is
Are
what
you leaning with Brunson because of the consistency as a scorer?
Consistency as a scorer. I think the half court stuff, the ability to create one-on-one without the need for mismatch hunting, I do think becomes more valuable, especially like in theory. Again, I know they're not going to play OKC because they didn't make it, but like in theory against OKC, I'm very concerned about how Halliburton looks when there's no mismatch to exploit. Now maybe he just obliterates OKC's defense. I'm like, oh, okay, my fault. Wasn't familiar. Didn't know he could do this. And then I might reevaluate. But as of now, I do think Brunson's scoring floor is way higher. I think the ability to get to pretty much whatever shot he wants whenever he wants. Now, last night, Nembhard did a hell of a job, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for what he was able to do. But generally speaking, I do prefer that with Brunson. I think he's routinely been able to churn out elite offenses, whether that be last year, this year when he's on the floor. It might look different to what Halliburton does, but the results, I think they speak for themselves with how good the Knicks offense has been with Brunson. Defensively, I think he's horrible. I'm factoring that in. I think Halliburton is a neutral, neutral on defense. I think Brunson is a detriment to his team's defense. I do think a lot of that is emphasized with the fact that Karl Anthony Towns is on the floor with him. So if you had maybe a more defensively inclined unit around Brunson, I don't think his defense would look as detrimental. And then I do think it's close. Like I said, I think Brunson's the 4th best point guard in the league. I think Halliburton's the 5th best point guard. Before the season, me and John D did our top 10 point guards in the league, and I think I had Halliburton at 8, maybe 7.
I think I had him around 6 or 7.
Yeah, so I've definitely grown on Halliburton. I think
notebook.
Yeah, I think I've got a lot higher on Halliburton. I think a big reason is that I think this is the best defensive year of his career, which is definitely something that I'm a lot higher on, because last year I think he was just a bad defender and that hurt him. And I wasn't as high on the self-creation, which I'm still not the biggest fan of, but I do think he's improved a lot in that regard. I'm trying to find the point guard list we did so I can see where exactly I had him, but I can't find it because we've done so many lists. There it is. Okay, I had Halliburton at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I had Halliburton at 7. John D, you also had him at 7, so we both suck. But yeah, now I have him at 5. So he's moved up. The people I had above him were Trey and Dame. I think he's better than both of them. I've been of that opinion for a while. I think he's the 2nd best point guard in the East. Halliburton's really good, but I do just slightly prefer Brunson at this moment in time. But if Halliburton is able to overcome the weaknesses I think he may have against his OKC defense, which comes down to the self-creation and just the ability to create advantages without the mismatches, that would be something I'm very high on. Or if the fact that he just moves the ball so quickly breaks this OKC defense to the point where he doesn't need to be able to create advantages one-on-one, that can also be something that can maybe move him slightly up. I don't think he'll ever be better than Steph, Luka, or Shea, who are my top 3, but he can be 4th in my opinion. But yeah, Indiana's really good. And I think it's good for the sport that they made the finals. An elite offensive team against an elite defensive team, a team that doesn't have the typical MVP level superstar. There's no Shea on Indiana. There's no Jokic. There's no Giannis. But I think it shows that you can build an elite basketball team without needing that top 5 player that everyone seems to think you need in order to go far in the playoffs. I think you just build a good team. I think that's what a front office is meant to do. Build a team that complements whatever you have, which is Siakam and Halliburton, and you build around that with a stretch 5 and Miles Turner, guys who can create off the dribble, and Nembhard and TJ McConnell, Aaron Nesmith, one of the best shooters in the league. Like, I think this is what teams are meant to do. Like, all these small markets who are like, oh, we can't get the top free agents. How are we going to compete? Look at the Pacers. What free agents they gonna get? But they're here building a competent team that can compete. So I think this should be the blueprint for a lot of the smaller markets, and I think it's good that they made it. Also, OKC, another smaller market. Now they have Shea, so it's kind of different, but still building through the draft with Chet and J-Dub, and then acquiring free agents who aren't the top tier, but their value to the team, like Isaiah Hartenstein, is huge. And then going to get a guy like Caruso, where all you have to do is give up someone who I'm not very high on in Josh Giddey. Now look, championship contenders, all-time great team. So I think this final is going to be good for the sport. I don't like the idea that some people are saying that this is going to be a boring finals, or that The NBA's done a bad job because we're not seeing the big market teams like the Knicks or the Lakers, etc., in the finals. I think this is going to be a great series, even if the Thunder do win comfortably, which I may be projecting. I still think it's going to be a great series. Is there anything you guys want to add to anything I just said?
Unfortunately, if the Thunder blitz Indiana, it's going to add a lot of fuel to the boring NBA Finals thing. But I'm under the belief that I just watch the games. I don't worry about the ratings. I think it's the NBA's job to market these teams and these players. And OKC all year long barely had any national TV time. They weren't marketed or pushed in front of our faces. The Celtics and Thunder matchup, one of them was on a Sunday at 3 p.m. when nobody cared on NBA TV.
Yeah, we were recording at that time.
I think,
on my other monitor.
Freaking Indiana, I mean, they're not getting pushed either. It's on the NBA to push every single market and make sure that they have the proper promotion behind them, so people are anticipating these type of matchups. But I think it is good. It's good that small markets are winning. And what I love about this year is one of the few years that I've kind of been okay with whoever wins the championship, because last year I really did not want the Celtics to win. Throughout my life, whenever LeBron went to Miami, every year was I'm against LeBron in Miami. Then when the Warriors blew up and they had KD, I'm just like, I'm against the Warriors and KD. I don't want them to win, even though it was inevitable. So I would say for maybe like 80% of my basketball watching life, I've just been opposed.
You've been hate watching.
Yes, I've been hate watching the top teams that are just favorited by so much. And this year it's two teams that if they win, I'm not counting Seattle with OKC's history, it'd be two teams that win their first championship.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I always say with the rates and stuff, they don't affect me because at the end of the day, I'm gonna still be watching. If the NBA has one viewer, that one viewer is gonna be me because I'm gonna be watching the basketball. So the rating stuff doesn't matter to me at all. I'm not a shareholder in the NBA, so however many people are watching the games doesn't really bother me because it doesn't affect my pockets. So this is gonna be a great series, a great battle of basketball. Whoever wins, even if it is a sweep, I expect that Indiana's gonna cause some problems. And if somehow Indiana do win, I think that would be great. I'm sorry. I think that would be great. Sorry, OKC fans. I know you probably don't want to hear that. But like, if Indiana do manage to pull this off, and OKC remain healthy, obviously, and we don't want to foresee any injuries. Hope everyone stays healthy. If Indiana do manage to pull this off, this ranks very highly in terms of like finals upsets. In my opinion, with how good I think OKC are, this is an all-time finals upset. Maybe 04 Pistons against the Lakers, or Mavs against Heat, or what other upsets can I think of off the top of my head? Those two come to mind instantly, but that's the level I would put it on in terms of upset. Now I understand what's going to come with that. It's definitely going to be Halliburton's a top 5 player, which is definitely not a conversation I'm willing to have. But I think it will be great, and also Rick Carlisle will have 2 of the biggest finals upsets in NBA history on his resume.
I didn't even think about that.
That's why I'm not counting out the Pacers too much. Rick Carlisle figured out the Miami Heat. So we'll see if he can figure out the OKC Thunder. Do you guys think that Pascal Siakam should have won ECF MVP?
Yeah, someone asked about that in the chat. I couldn't see who asked. There was someone. No, Hallie was my conference finals MVP.
Yeah, he was mine too. It was
close. It was 5-4, I think. So.
Yeah, I just noticed there's 9 voters that vote on it, and an odd number. It makes sense, so you can't have a tie. But the 9 people,
you could still have a tie. 4 vote for Hallie, 4 vote for Siakam, and 1 other votes for Nempod. You have a tie.
Oh yeah, you're right. But yeah, realistic tie. I was just looking at the people who voted on it, and they all have jobs. They all like cover the sport in some sort of way. But I don't know if it's just me. Maybe I'm remembering things wrong. But has the finals MVP or the conference finals MVP always been voted by just a group of 9 beat reporters?
It's not many. It's like I wanted to say I thought the finals MVP was 11. I thought that's how many people voted on it. But it's not a lot of people. It's another reason why I don't care about the award. But yeah, it's just a few people, very few. It's not like the MVP award where it's 100 voters. It's very few people.
Yeah, maybe it's just me, but I'm under the assumption that I think those type of awards should be voted on people that might have a little bit more cachet. People people that like players, maybe like the team itself, like, okay, who does the team think was their most impactful player in that series? I think maybe another way to determine it, because Pascal Siakam was incredible and there's no knocking what he did, but I thought Hallie was the most impactful player in the series.
Yeah,
Was it game 2 where Pascal had 40?
Yeah,
He did. He had 39. Yeah.
That game was huge. Game 1, I think he sucked. The game 2 was huge. The game 4 win, he was really good. And then last night, I think he was really good. I think Hallie in game 4 had an historic performance, which is very impressive to me. I think game 1, the way he closed that game was huge. Last night, I think he played well. I do also think that there was some boosting of set stats when the game was already over. He ended with 21. I want to say he probably had like a legitimate 14. But go do your thing, Hallie. I respect it. But yeah, I think Halliburton, just with what he brings to the offense, I do think makes him the most valuable pacer. And I think a lot of Indiana's stuff starts with him. So like Pascal being the elite mismatch attacker is amazing and he gets credit for that. But I think the reason the mismatch is there in the first place is because of Halliburton. So how do you decipher between who's the more valuable player between those two? It's tough for me, but I favored Halliburton. But I understand why Pascal got it. I'm not saying it's blasphemy. I understand how Pascal got it. I just know if I was a voter, I would have voted for Halliburton. But I'm sure they don't really care either way. Have you seen the clip of Halliburton thinking he was going to win the awards?
Yeah.
I find that funny. But it doesn't really bother me too much who won it. But I still think Halliburton was the best player in the series. So whether or not he has the award or not doesn't really change my perspective on how Halliburton played. But for his resume, I think he probably would have rather to have the conference finals MVP. But maybe he can win the finals MVP. Who knows? John D, who did you have win the conference finals MVP?
I had Tyrese. I think just being the guy that controls the pace for one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the playoffs, is extremely important. Even when he was not scoring, I still think he was controlling the pace and facilitating at the level that he's expected to, especially in like the first half of Game 6, where he wasn't being as aggressive as a scorer or his shot wasn't going down, but he was still controlling the pace and initiating offense. So I think Tyrese Halliburton was the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. But I do stand with you. I don't necessarily like it. Doesn't bother me that Pascal won it. I would have given it to Hallie, but I don't know. I think the Eastern Conference Finals MVP is still new, so a lot of people may not care as much. But I think down the line, people are going to start caring about that Eastern Conference Finals MVP a little more. Like, oh, this guy, he's better than him because he has 3 Eastern Conference Finals MVPs. So who knows? It may happen.
No one's won it more than once.
Yeah.
Tatum has one, Jimmy has one, Jaylen Brown has one, and now Pascal has one, which I think is cool. And then in the West, it's
Luka, Curry, Shea,
Luka, Steph, Shea, and Jokic. So it's interesting. The West has been a bunch of top 5 players, and then the East has been a bunch of shout out to the East
players, but
shout out to the East. Before we move on to the West, Akeem Brian Akeem asked me to rank these guys as off-ball players, but we can all join in. MJ, KD, Bird, and Kobe. Joel, I'm gonna start with you. Rank these guys as off-ball players.
Number 1, I'll go KD. Number 2, this is tough. I'm gonna rank Bird last by default. I'm not gonna say I'm like I'm not too like tapped in with Larry Bird in the 80s. So it's really between MJ and Kobe. I think I'd go with MJ second and Kobe third.
I actually got Bird number 1. I have Bird number 1. I have KD number 2. I'm gonna have Bird 1. I'm gonna have Kobe last. I'll have KD 2 and MJ 3. Yeah. I don't know how convinced I am with 2 and 3, but I know Bird first, Kobe last.
I'm gonna go. Yeah, Bird 1 does make sense, but I don't care. KD 1, KD 1, Bird 2, Kobe 3, MJ 4. That's what I'll do. I like the other three's ability to spot up from 3, catch and shoot, those type of things. I think Kobe's off-ball game does get underrated anyway. Really good coming off curls, pin downs, really quick attacking off closeouts. Similar to really MJ in that regard. So, I mean, obviously they played in a similar system, but Kobe had that extra dimension to where he could spot from three, which I do think gives him the slight edge. KD and Bird is close for me because Bird has like that off-ball passing game, which is really valuable. But similar to Kobe and MJ, KD's ability to come off screens for threes does separate him from Larry Bird, in my opinion, who was more to the elbow, to the free throw line, etc. So I do slightly favor that. Now, it might be a product of error, but unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. So I'm going to go KD 1, Bird 2, Kobe 3, MJ 4, but all four are elite all-time off-ball players. Maybe in like tier 2 all-time, really, like behind like Steph and like Reggie Miller or something. But that's going to be my order. But anyway, on to the Western Conference. Just like we did the East, we're going to start with the team that unfortunately lost in the conference finals. They lost in 5. I'm going to start with you, John D. What are your thoughts on the Timberwolves in that series and the Timberwolves throughout the playoffs and what's next for them?
I think you hit the head on it on Twitter the other day. I don't know how long ago this was, but having a young player that's just like so good to the point where you can't build other young assets around them, it really hurts them, because the Minnesota Timberwolves are in a position where it's like we've just went to 2 back-to-back finals and we're trying to take the next step, but our superstar is 23. Like we should have all the time in the world to like really put the right team around him, but it's like our superstar is a top 10 to 12 player in the NBA, 10 to 13, whatever you have them, so it's going to be really interesting to see what they do this offseason because they made the decision to trade Cat because they wanted more financial flexibility. And if they re-sign Julius Randle, I think that takes away all of their financial flexibility. You got to bring back Naz Reid. You got to bring back Nickeil Alexander-Walker. You got to bring, and you are preparing to bring back Julius Randle unless he takes that player option. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. I still do think they need some type of lead guard because I think Mike Conley is at the tail end of his career to where he's not going to be impactful for a championship team. I think Rob Dillingham still is maybe a year or 2 away. I can see a world where he is their starting point guard of the future, but I don't think it'll be as early as next year. So I actually proposed this trade idea on PC a couple of days ago. What do you think about them sending Dante DiVincenzo and maybe a future pick to the Magic for Anthony Black?
I've been DiVincenzo and a pick for Anthony Black.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Just to have like a 6'7" guard that can dribble, drive, kick out, can be not necessarily a negative on defense, because I think you do need some type of guard to set the table. I don't think Ant should be the guy that does that consistently on an 82-game basis. I just don't think Mike Conley is there either for an 82-game basis. And I think Anthony Black could be somebody that could be a lob passer for Rudy Gobert, somebody that can push the tempo, somebody that isn't going to get picked on as much as a Mike Conley or a Rob Dillingham would next year. So I think that could like implement them in the Timberwolves.
I'd rather give up Rob Dillingham than DiVincenzo.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. From the Timberwolves, I think DiVincenzo's value as like an outside shooter, more size than Dillingham, and Dillingham puts forth effort on defense, so I commend him. But at the end of the day, he's 6'1", like 170. Like there is just going to be a ceiling to what he can do defensively. And do we think he's going to be part of the rotation next year? Do we think he's going to be a contributor to a team that's trying to go far in the playoffs? I don't know. And I think his offensive upside is something that Orlando can afford to take a bet on, because if Dillingham does turn out to be the offensive player that maybe he sees himself potentially being, or that he can be, I think you're in a good spot. And this, I'm not going to say it's a low price because I do think Anthony Black is really good, but Anthony Black is a player for Orlando. It's like, he probably needs the ball in his hands to be effective, but we have Paolo in France and he can't really shoot the ball. So like, where does he fit in with that? And I think whereas the Timberwolves can afford to put the ball in his hands, because Anthony Edwards A needs to improve off the ball, and B, Anthony Black is more of a point guard anyway. So I think that probably makes more sense for the Timberwolves. It just comes down to, do Orlando want to give up defense for Rob Dillingham, who is by all accounts a bad defender? I don't know, but I do agree with trying to add some size and some playmaking. I would be looking at Lonzo. I
Yeah,
said
I was. That was
that.
the next. Yeah, that was the
Yeah,
next.
I'd be looking at Lonzo. Obviously, major gamble on the health and stuff, but that's who I'd be looking at if I was the Timberwolves, a player of his skill set. Also, maybe you just think, hey, a Bulls guard who's really good on defense. Seen one team acquire one, and they're in the finals. Maybe we're next. I don't know.
Thanks.
And I also think if Lonzo is fully healthy, I think he's better than Caruso. So why not? It's just a major gamble, obviously, but I would look into it, see what the asking price is for Lonzo.
I would do it. And that's $10 million a year. Like that's the
something.
easy salary to move. I still think at fully healthy, he's like one of the better passers in the league.
Absolutely.
Like he's a really good passer. He can push the pace. He's athletic. Man, hey, it is a gamble, but like I think that's something that's like high risk, high reward. You know, if Lonzo can come in and be that defender next to Ant, knock down some open shots, get Ant the ball, man.
I remember someone saying maybe last week on PC, is Tyrese Halliburton just what Lonzo was supposed to be? And I'm gonna be honest, I think yes. I'm gonna be honest. Like, the way they play is very similar. It's just Lonzo never was able to maximize like the offensive ability to create for himself. But like the passing gift, the ability to push tempo, and the difference is like Lonzo's like an elite defensive player. So like it was like Lonzo really was like Jason Kidd version 2. Like that's really what he was. It never worked out. But like I do see the similarities. And I would be willing to take a flyer on Lonzo, but I'm also like really high on Lonzo still. Like I think even this year, coming off missing 2 years, I think he was elite on defense. I think he was the Bulls' best defensive player. Now it's not saying much, it was the Bulls, but like he was really, really good on defense. The offense is the thing that kind of let him down. Like he wasn't making his threes consistently, and he's never really had like a scoring game to go to, which is the concern. But you put him on the Timberwolves, where his responsibility is either going to be to just table set the offense, or when Ant has the ball, he's meant to just space the floor, spot up. I do think Lonzo with more rhythm, more time just to get himself back into the flow of things, I think Lonzo can shoot the ball. His year before he got hurt, he was shooting like 40% from three. So like, I would do it. That's where I'm at. Joel, you're looking at like where you have a lot of wishful thinking going on. What are your thoughts on Lonzo?
It's funny you mentioned the Lonzo and Halliburton thing because I tweeted that like I think like 2 years ago or like a year ago during the Halliburton November March Madness stretch. I was like, yeah, like what Halliburton's doing now is like it makes me sad because I feel like this is what Lonzo should be doing in the league right now. But
and he was supposed to be in purple and gold.
I think Minnesota, I think they're in a good position. It's opposite from the Knicks, where I feel like they have avenues to create flexibility and to be good for the future. I think that they need to be very cautious about this offseason, though. I think the Knicks are in a position where they need to make something happen because the window is closing in on them. I think with Minnesota, I don't agree with any big time trade. Like I know Kevin Durant will be rumored to them all offseason long, and they could make the contracts work with a Randall and Naz Reid signing trade and maybe putting in Rob Dillingham or a pick in there to go get Kevin Durant. And it would make them better in the short term. But I just don't know if that pushes them over the top against a team like OKC. And I think that the concern with KD is he's older. Rudy Gobert is also older and he's regressing. He's virtually like just nothing on offense now. He just doesn't provide anything at all. He can't make layups. His touch is awful around the rim. He can't catch the ball. And with having 3 players in the starting lineup that are all like 33 or older with Conley, KD, and Gobert, I question the flexibility around that long term when those players are gone. And I think the priority for Minnesota is keeping Randall and keeping Naz Reid. Now, it's important to note that Alexander Walker is phenomenal, but you still have Terrence Shannon Jr., who I think can get a bigger role in rotation next year. They still have Dante and they have Jalen Clark. I think they have the necessary guard and wing players to replace Alexander Walker. They don't have a backup big, so Naz Reid is a priority. And his extension would be 4 years, $96 million, so $23 million per year, around that number he'd be getting. And Julius Randle's the one that kind of hurts a little bit more because his is 4 years, 196 million. So you'd be paying him 49 million per season. And that's probably a lot of money for Julius Randle, and you don't want to pay that much for him. But I also don't want to lose Julius Randle for nothing. I know the OKC series has soured everybody on him, but he also had 2 great games in that series. And for the entirety of the playoffs, he was also great for them. And I think that if you just keep Randle and Naz Reid and run this team back and find an upgrade at the point guard position, I think the 3 feasible options are Derek White at his contract, Andrew Nembhard. Pacers probably say no, they're not going to do it, but maybe try to explore something just because of his contract. And I agree. I had Lonzo Ball in my notes at 10 million per season next year. It is a contract that is easy to trade for. So those are the moves that I'd be looking for if I'm Minnesota, because in the next 7 seasons, they don't control 6 of their first round picks. Most of them are swaps. They have little to no control over of their picks. So to me, I don't think that a big gamble is worth it if it's at the cost of their flexibility, because I do think they have some young talent that can grow with Anthony Edwards. And who knows, like this team made the conference finals and they ran into OKC, that by all accounts is an all-time statistical great team. In a different year, if they get an easier matchup, who's to say they can't break through and get lucky? Because I think a lot of the times in the playoffs, it is about who you play. And let's say if Denver beat OKC in game 7, do I think Minnesota could have beat an injured Denver team with Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. injured and how they play Jokic? Sometimes you just need things to break your way. So if I was Minnesota, I'd want to stay in the mix, but not make anything drastic and just hope for some sort of luck to hit you.
Yeah, I think it's weird because I think they're close in terms of like they're one of the best teams in the West, but like I think they're way like below OKC. So it's like it's weird. Like they might be like the second best team in the West, but they're so far behind number 1 that it would take a lot for them to catch them. But to your point, like the playoffs is all about matchups, and OKC, they did nearly lose to Denver, even though I think they were a way better team. Like they ended up in the game 7, and Aaron Gordon was injured in that game 7. So, you know, who knows? So like I think fortunate circumstances could get Minnesota to the finals with the current iteration of the roster. I think Lonzo would help. I think a point guard in general would help. I was just looking this up because someone said anyone who trades for Lonzo deserves to lose. Did you know that Lonzo had a +6 net rating when he was on the floor for the Bulls this year?
How many games did he play this year?
Let me check. Because the sample size is quite small in terms of minutes. It was like 700 minutes. Lonzo this year played 35 games. He missed some time with a hand injury right when he came back. And then towards the end of the season, he just wasn't playing. I don't know what the reason for that one was. But he played 35 games this year, and his efficiency was poor. 36% from the field, 34% from 3. But the reason they had a +6 net rating with him on the floor was because their defense was competent. Like Lonzo Ball, and we've seen this in 2022 when it was him and Caruso. Lonzo Ball is one of the very few guards, in my opinion, who genuinely affects like team defense at that level. Like it's very rare that a guard affects the overall outcome of the team's defense. Like they might be elite, but it's very rare that you see like a defense is 8 points better with said guard on, and then 8 points worse with him off. Like that's very rare, but you see it with Lonzo and you see it with Caruso, which is why I'm very, very high on both of them. Like in 2022, they had a positive net rating with Lonzo on the court again, and they were one of the best defenses in the league. It's a very common theme with Lonzo Ball out there. Like even with the offensive shortcomings which exist, I still think that's worth, especially at a low price. Like I don't think it's going to cost much to get Lonzo. Like all it cost OKC to get Caruso was Josh Giddey, and no disrespect to Josh Giddey, he couldn't play for OKC. Like they were giving him like 5 minutes a game in the playoffs when it came down to it. And like that's all they had to give up for him. Now maybe it's like another man's trash is another man's treasure, whatever the quote is. So maybe the Bulls really thought he was a hot commodity. I don't know. But like if you're the Timberwolves, I don't think it takes that much to get Lonzo. And it is a I wouldn't call it high risk. Like I would call it like a low risk, high reward. Like you don't have to spend much. And if it does work out, Lonzo is an elite defender who can really help you. And if it doesn't work out, it's like, oh, well, we're paying someone $10 million and can't stay healthy. Like you'll be all right.
They could essentially just use Mike Conley's contract to go get Lonzo. And I know Mike Conley is like the veteran presence there, but he was just a non-factor in the playoffs. And I think if you have Mike Conley out of there, it opens up a rotation spot for Dillingham, and then you have Lonzo, and maybe they start Dante at the point guard next year next to Ant, or they start Lonzo. I mean, there's so many different ways they can go about it. So I think that they could, like, Mike Conley could be like the feature guy with like a pick, and they could get it done, like the 17th overall pick in the draft. Okay, and then Lonzo's there. I like Minnesota's depth that they have, and they have the 17th pick in this draft as well. So this draft, they have some good center options that I think could be a long-term replacement for Naz Reid, or maybe a potential starter down the line. That's why I like where Minnesota is right now. They're a really good team that I don't think they should make any drastic moves or get desperate, because Anthony Edwards has been to 2 back-to-back conference finals and can't break through to the NBA finals just yet. I think that they should remain patient. And you ran into OKC, and you have to tip your hat to them, but I don't think that just because you lose to OKC, it's time to blow it up.
I actually think they did well offensively against OKC as well. Defensively,
it was their defense.
Defensively, they couldn't guard them.
Yeah.
But offensively, I think they did better against OKC than anyone else did. Well, I mean, they only played Memphis and Denver, but Denver was like a team who was like, oh my God, how are they going to stop Denver? Jokic. They guarded them well.
And the Lonzo thing I like, because I was referencing this on one of the last episodes of the podcast we did, I think yesterday, that Jaden McDaniels, it's back-to-back conference finals that he's just been absolutely torched by Shea and Luka. And I don't think it says nothing about him. You know, Shea and Luka are just exceptional players. But if you can maximize McDaniels' defense off the ball more as a roamer and helping on gaps and get a real point of attack defender, which I think Lonzo could be, it just gives them more options defensively, to where McDaniels doesn't have to solely have the responsibility of being that defensive stopper, because we've seen in the last 2 matchups, granted against superstar players in the conference finals, he hasn't had his way. And I think a large part of that is his physicality and his proneness to pick up fouls, and also just the lack of strength, where Luka was able to take advantage of that, and so is Shea. So I think if he's able to be more of a help defender in these matchups against these specific players, it could make Minnesota's team defense better.
I actually think both of them could be really good roamers. They could switch a lot between Lonzo, McDaniels, even Ant sometimes. Like, I think Ant could be in a situation that Jaylen Brown's in. Like, Jaylen Brown's going to be used as a point of attack defender because we have so many better off-ball defenders, off-ball defensive options. But the only reason I would draw back from that just a little bit because of the offensive responsibility that Ant has. But I think Lonzo and McDaniels would be able to roam really well with their athleticism and how they blow up actions in their length as well. So I think all of that would be really good for Minnesota if they go get Lonzo.
Yeah, sounds like we're all just saying go get Lonzo Ball, man. Free him. He doesn't deserve to be in Chicago, man. But enough about the Timberwolves. On to the team that actually won the series. They won in 5, won quite handily. Credit to you, John D. You did predict 5. I said 6. You was right. What are you guys' thoughts on OKC throughout the playoffs, and then looking forward against the Pacers? Joel, I'm gonna start with you.
They cruised through Memphis. Outside of games 3 and 4, they were closer, but they made like a 25+ point comeback in game 3. I thought they looked very vulnerable against Denver, and I was worried about them against Denver. I think that their defensive game plan on them really rattled them. Shea figured it out, but I think the real question marks were just Chet and J-Dub, and can they be consistent offensively? Like, can Shea get some help? Because there were moments in that series where we're like, okay, this was the concern. Like, or is there going to be more people to step up around Shea? And then game 7 happened, and they just all had phenomenal games, and they didn't look back after that. The Western Conference Finals, outside of the one loss they had, they were all elite in the conference finals, and it felt like a real maturation process in a period that they needed to go through that adversity to then develop into what they are right now and gain that confidence into these matches, because I didn't think J-Dub was going to play as good as he played against Minnesota. And I will say he has probably been the person who's impressed me the most in OKC's playoff run, and how consistent he was offensively in the conference finals, just getting to his shots, hitting that mid-range shot consistently. With Shea off the floor, they've had a better offense by a couple of points. And it's because of his shot creation and then just Chet hitting his outshot shots and just being a monster under the rim and dunking everything. So those two have taken a leap to where I think we all know you're going to get a consistent elite level of play from Shea. But if you get those two stars playing like stars under Shea with that depth, I think it makes this team borderline unbeatable. And this is the peak version, at least this year, because they're going to continue to get better next year. But for this year, that is the peak version of what they are. And it just makes me like question, is there anybody that can beat them? Is there anybody that can challenge them? And I think if we got those versions consistently in the Denver series, that series would have ended in 5 or 6. So I was really impressed with OKC's two young co-stars in Chet and J-Dub. I think those were the two guys that really made their biggest mark to me, and they proved that they're ready for the moment.
One thing I've said multiple times was this is like, I don't even think they're like scratching the surface of how good they can be as a trio. I think Chet hasn't gotten multiple full seasons to progress like J-Dub has gotten. J-Dub has gotten 3 years to really progress and improve. Chet's had his second season where he played all 82, I believe. He missed 50 games this year. He missed his entire rookie year. There's still like a real ceiling that Chet still hasn't hit yet as an offensive player, as a defender. We know how gifted he is, the way he's able to put the ball on the floor and drive consistently, knock down open shots. And then J-Dub is now starting to create easier shots for himself. That's something that I questioned coming into the postseason, was how consistent will he be able to deal with contact and creating easy shots for himself. He's done a lot better over the course of the postseason. It's been some ups, it's been some downs, but he was fantastic in the series against Memphis. I think he was really good against Minnesota. I think it was up and down in Denver, but I still think he was overall a positive. There's still a lot more that OKC can get better at, and they're already the best team in the league. Like, you have Cason Wallace, who's in his second year. You brought in Alex Caruso. You brought in Isaiah Hartenstein. You have a top 5 prospect from last year's draft just waiting and watching. Like, this team's gonna be really good, and I only see them getting better. They're probably gonna go get Cam Johnson to not have to worry about all that shooting issues they had in the postseason as well. So that's gonna make it even worse.
Yeah, they have a plus 11 net rating in the playoffs, and they're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the playoffs. That's what I was trying to find where they rank in 3-point percentage, because like if you watch them play, they create elite looks like every time down the floor. Like against even Denver's zone, they were creating wide open threes. They just couldn't shoot. So if you look in the playoffs, the Pacers actually lead the playoffs in 3-point percentage. That might be relevant, 40%. The only teams below the Thunder are 3 teams that lost in round 1: the Pistons, the Grizzlies, and the Magic. The Magic, obviously, notoriously bad shooting team. Now, they shot 26% in the series. Says a lot. Memphis, who played against OKC's defense, shot 30% from 3. And the Pistons, who played against the Knicks, shot 32% from 3. Everyone else, Oklahoma City, at 33.5%, they're worse than them. And this is an OKC team who were first in the league in 3-point percentage since January 1st. They were first in the league, and they've been horrible from 3 in the playoffs. And they still have, by far, the best net rating in the playoffs and one of the best net ratings in the playoffs of all time. That says a lot about how, like, in a league where 3-point variance is king, and apparently, like, any team can beat another on any given game because one team makes 15 threes, another team makes 4, you lose the game because of a 3-point shot. The fact that they're able to dominate series, dominate games, and they haven't shot the 3 well, says a lot about how high their floor is. And I think that's because of their defense. I think this is the best defense I've seen since I've been an NBA fan, a basketball fan, which is a very small sample of time. But then even just going back, like, you're looking at 08 Celtics, 04 Pistons level defense. Now they do it differently, but the impact, I think, is right there. And then Alex Caruso is obviously just my favorite player of all time. So that's a huge deal. It's just, I think they're the best. I think they're the best team. I think they're the better team. If they don't win, I'm gonna be extremely disappointed. I think this team has to win. That's how good I think they are. So I have them in 5. That's my prediction. I think they're going to beat the Pacers in 5. I want to know where you guys stand. Where do you guys stand on OKC?
I have. It's like I'm doing this again, Mars, where we were picking Cavs and Pacers, and it's just like I really like the Pacers, man, but it's like, damn. I got OKC in 5. I do think I think the most this is going to go is 6 games, but I got OKC in 5. I think the Pacers are going to have to play like their margin of error. Once again, the Thunder are always going to have the margin of error advantage because they have one of the highest floors in the NBA. And the Pacers are going to have to come out really hot, which is something they can do, but I think Pascal's going to struggle. I think Matherin can struggle. Neesmith can struggle. Nembhard can struggle. That lineup that you put out, they probably are going to go with that. They're going to switch a lot. Yeah. The Pacers are great, but it's like this isn't the matchup for them. This just isn't the matchup for them to win.
I have OKC in 5, and based on whether or not they get a great 3-point shooting series, maybe it could be a sweep, but I doubt it. I doubt it would be a sweep because I think they probably win the first 2 games, maybe even take a 3-0 lead. I think they let their foot off the gas and give up a game on the road so they can celebrate the championship at
like
home.
A Boston-Dallas situation?
Yes, where it's like, okay, like we want to celebrate this in front of our home crowd. We don't want to do it on the road. And when you're beating a team that bad in the series and you have a lead, you probably feel confident if you're playing your best, you could beat them again. So that's how I think it's going to be. I think they're going to win in 5 games. Maybe Indiana pushes all the right buttons and Rick Carlisle has the perfect game plan for OKC. But I think they're just too good. And the way that they play, it's very interesting to see how Sam Presti has built out this roster because they're not a tall team. They're not a heavy team. In terms of all the teams in the league, their players account for the least amount of weight, and their height is around middle of the pack. But they make up for size traditionally with other avenues like wingspan. J-Dub is 6'5", but his wingspan is so long that the ground that he covers is like somebody that's 6'9". Caruso, same thing.
Wingspan, I think.
Yeah, I mean, these guys just are lengthy and they can just play gaps so well because of that. And even though on paper you look at, oh, he's 6'5", he's 6'5", oh, he's not, Chet is like 7 foot and like 190 pounds. They just make up for it in so many different ways that it is kind of crazy to see how Sam Presti has built a team like that by not relying on traditional size and finding it in different avenues. Because I think sometimes we kind of get caught up in, okay, this guy's 7 foot, this guy's 6'10", the 7-footer has more size. But if the 6'10" player has a larger wingspan, he actually covers more ground than the 7-foot player. So there's just different ways to measure these things, and OKC has kind of nailed it on the head.
These are our predictions. Very unique. All of us picking the exact same thing. OKC in 5. The neutral in me wants this series to be extended, wants it to be a long series, an entertaining series, close games. The realist in me says this is probably not going to be that close. But we shall see. But we have all gone with OKC in 5. So sorry, Pacers fans, for disappointing. We do have a couple super chats, and then we will be out of here. We have one from Kingbo. I'm gonna ask you this, Joel. Can Pascal post up against OKC?
I don't think so. I think we saw Julius Randle really struggle in that matchup, and I think Dort's physicality and Jado's physicality is going to be a lot to handle. That's really one of the players that I see struggling in a series. I think Siakam is probably going to have a tough series getting going, and you could argue that his shot is more reliable than Randle's, and I think that this might be a series where he just is going to get deployed more on the perimeter than in the nail area or the elbow. I could see that, but Siakam, his shot has a lot of variance to it. So I don't know if I see Siakam making much of an impact in this series.
I think anytime you're a mismatch attacker, Jaren Jackson in round 1, Julius Randle in the conference finals. Against OKC, the mismatches don't exist. Like, so, and I think Pascal falls into that realm where if you are someone who prioritizes that ability, I don't know where you go from there. Personally, I don't know where you go. So that's why I'm hesitant with Pascal and Halliburton to a lesser extent. I just don't know where the mismatches are, but that's on Rick Carlisle and the coaching staff to figure out. But I don't want to see post-ups. That's one thing I don't want to see against the OKC ever. I don't want to see post-ups. You have your back to the defense. They have such great guys in the gaps. It's practically impossible. So, yeah, Pascal, you got to find other ways, whether that's facing up, whether that's getting the ball at the nail. Like, you got to do different things, but post-ups is not going to be the answer for me. And then one more super chat from Finn275 said, off topic, but I think KD's playmaking is underrated. What do you guys think? I believe his gravity never gets brought up. His scoring creates shots for others. What do you guys think about KD's playmaking?
You're muted.
We talked about this before. Was I think scoring and playmaking can be on the same string. You know, scoring opens up opportunities for your playmaking by just attracting doubles and collapsing the defense. And your playmaking can open up opportunities for your scoring. Teams may not win a double as quick because they know you're going to make the right read possible every single time. We saw it in the Thunder Nuggets series. Sometimes Jokic would get the ball in the post, and it's like Chet is kind of hesitant to send help because he knows as soon as he sends help, the lob for Aaron Gordon is in the air. So I think KD's playmaking does get underrated, especially when he was in Brooklyn. And there was like a stint where I think Kyrie was out and Ben Simmons was out, and he was just hooping with like Bruce Brown and Nicholas Claxton, and he was playmaking. Or his MVP year where Russ was out and he was like the point forward and he was scoring. I think he won scoring champion that year. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, his playmaking is very underrated. It's probably going to stay that way. That it's like that for a lot of some of the best scorers in NBA history. I think Kobe's playmaking is going to be underrated. I think MJ's playmaking is going to be underrated. Those just happen when it's like, oh, you're an elite scorer. That's all you do, you know?
Yeah, I hate those talking points. Joel, what do you think about KD's playmaking?
I think he's a good playmaker. Underrated, it just depends on who you ask. I think over the last couple of playoffs, I've seen him struggle as a playmaker. Thinking to the Minnesota series where they just let him play one-on-one essentially, but nobody on Phoenix could make a skip pass to the corner, and Minnesota took advantage of that. And then looking back at the Boston series where they were really helping and just taking away any breathing room away from KD, and a lot of his passes were a little bit late. And I think KD is one of those players that his playmaking is fine if it's like a pass away, but like advanced passes, at times he can make cross-court passes and they could be nice and on the money, but consistently breaking down a defense as a playmaker first, I don't see that. I think he's heavily relying on the scoring gravity to make those reads, and he's good. I think he's good, but that's where as far as I'd go with it.
Yeah, I think he's solid. I think his passing isn't great. I do think he does create a lot of opportunities for his teammates just because of, well, prime Kevin Durant. This Kevin Durant, I don't think draws the same amount of attention. And I think he runs probably too many pick and rolls for his skill set. But that's just the byproduct of whatever system he's in. But I do think KD off the ball still is going to draw that level of attention. You're probably going to put 2 on the ball in situations. He can make reads over the top, but he does become turnover prone if you crowd him. So he's not perfect. He's not close to perfect, but I do think he's a good playmaker. So underrated, yeah, because I do think people just view him as a bad playmaker, which is weird to me. So I don't know, on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 7 maybe. That's probably where I'm at with Kevin Durant. But that does just about do it. Before we do get out of here, Joel, where can everyone find you?
You can find me at Joel V. Moran on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and on Pick a Side, and also on Player's Choice. I'm there sometimes going up and chopping it up with you guys as well.
Yeah, you do be there sometimes. I heard what Joel said about me. He said I have the best takes of all time. John Z, where can everyone find you?
You guys can find me over at the Buzzer Sports. We do reaction videos, we do draft content, we do off-season content, historic content, any form of basketball. You want it, we got it. You guys can find me on Playback, where we're going to be doing this off-season, breaking down some historic games. We might even have some 60 games in there. Who knows? We're gonna be watching some of Kobe's greatest games, because we know after SGA and the Thunder win the finals, Kobe versus SGA talk is going to be disgusting. So if you want to just go find a channel where we can have some Kobe love, go ahead, head down at the Buzzer Sports, man. We got everything you could want.
There you go. John D's links will be in the description. Pick a Sides will also be in the description. Go subscribe to them. Very, very interesting podcast with some very, very interesting individuals. I will say that. But also breaking news. During the finals, me and John D it's not guaranteed, but it's likely, I will say likely, we may be podding after each game of the finals, which means I may be committed to streaming what's that, like 7 times in like 2 weeks.
Chat, we got him.
Maybe.
We got him, chat.
So progress is being made on that front in terms of me like doing my job and stuff. So that would be cool. So make sure you keep your eye out for that. But like Joel said, you can find him on Pick a Side, you can find him on PC. John D, same, you can find him at the Buzzer Sports and on PC and over here. So go subscribe to it everywhere where you can find those guys. But until Thursday, because that will be the next time we're live, because that is game 1. Thank you guys for watching. Merry Christmas, and we will see you when we see you. Goodbye, and goodbye, Dab. There we go.